This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
Sean Diddy Combs wants the world to believe he's found peace, that his so-called spiritual reset in prison has changed him, humbled him, made him a new man. But if you read between the lines of his latest move asking the federal appeals court to fast-track his case, you see the same old Diddy, the same inflated sense of self-importance, the same belief that the rules bend for him because, in his mind, they always have. The request itself isn't illegal. Defendants can absolutely ask for an expedited hearing, but the psychology behind it, that's what tells the story. This isn't about due process. It's about ego maintenance. It's about the man who spent decades living in a world that existed solely to serve him, and now facing the same system that every other convicted felon faces, he can't stand the idea of waiting his turn. That's why he thinks by asking for the expedited appeal, of course they'll bow to him because he's Diddy. Combs has served just over a year of his 4-year sentence for flying women and male sex workers or driving them across state lines to engage in drug-fueled sexual encounters. He wants oral arguments heard by April, months earlier than normal, so that if his conviction gets overturned, he can benefit from the reductions offered under rehabilitation programs. You can practically hear the subtext. I am Sean Combs. I'm not built to sit in a cell while the wheels of justice grind slowly. I don't know how to do a Sean Diddy Combs impersonation, but there you go. Here's the part that makes it so hard to stomach, though. His lawyers told the court that the fallout from his conviction has devastated his business. Oh, you think? Oh, it devastated his business. So those hundreds of people, I know you weren't convicted on all of them. I know there's still like hundreds of pending civil suits against you. But the allegations from the hundreds of people, in my opinion, allegedly, all that bullshit, what about them? What about them? Oh, it's hurt your business. Oh, excuse me. Well, I don't give a rat's ass. Because when I saw you stomping on Cassie's head in that video, all give a shits kind of went out the window for me. How about you? Over 100 people lost their jobs because of the empire that collapsed around him. Well, consider themselves freaking lucky that you're not employed by the monster anymore. People who depended on him for their livelihoods are now out of work. Not about people losing their jobs by any means, but when you're working for the devil, basically, maybe there's other opportunities out there. Just saying. It's not like he's the only one hiring. He's asking the courts to hurry up so he can get back to making money again. He'll find a way. He always does. There's no acknowledgement that the reason these people are jobless is because of his actions. There's no humility in the face of wreckage he caused. It's just the same refrain of poor me wrapped in legal language and narcissistic spin. It's the only modality this man has. Let's remember who we're talking about here. The man who for decades sold himself as the embodiment of success, power, and excess. The man whose name was synonymous with luxury and domination. And according to his former employees, that image was built on fear. In the documentary, The Making of a Bad Boy, staffers and insiders described a culture of intimidation where saying no was not an option, where boundaries blurred, where parties weren't just parties but exercises in control. One former employee said there ain't a Diddy party that didn't turn into a freak-off. Another recalled him telling people that This is what you had to do to make it in the industry. Allegedly. All of it allegedly. That's not mentorship. That's coercion dressed in the language of ambition. That's not leadership. It's domination. And now when he's finally facing real-world consequences, he wants to speed the whole damn thing up because waiting, apparently, is for everyone else, the little people. His lawyers point out that he's participating in substance abuse treatment programs and other rehabilitative efforts, as if checking those boxes should move him to the front of the line. Here's the thing, though. Accountability doesn't have a fast lane. Transformation doesn't come with a court-approved timetable. The irony is staggering. The same man who allegedly made people wait on him hand and foot for decades, who made employees live on his schedule, his whims, his moods, now can't stomach waiting on the justice system. He's not used to being told no. He's used to snapping his fingers and having doors open. But the federal courts don't care about celebrity branding, dear Diddy. They don't care about your Instagram following or your Grammy count. They care about the record. They care about the law. And when you strip away the luxury veneer, this appeal is just another extension of the same behavior that got him here in the first place. Control. It's about regaining the narrative, reasserting power, making sure he's not the one waiting for anyone else to decide his fate. Narcissists don't do well with submission. They don't tolerate losing control. They rewrite the script so that even when they're the villain, they're still getting top billing. At sentencing, he told the judge he was disgusted by his behavior, that he was ashamed and remorseful. But words are cheap. Apologies don't erase patterns. A true reckoning doesn't look like, let's get this appeal over with quickly so I can start rebuilding my empire. It looks like sitting with the consequences for as long as it takes. It looks like prioritizing the people you harmed, not the clock running out on your incarceration. And let's talk about those people. The women who testified, the employees who described living in fear, the individuals who are still suing him for what they say they endured under his watch. They've been waiting years for justice, some for decades. For them, nothing has been fast. Reporting abuse wasn't fast. Healing wasn't fast. Watching the system move wasn't fast. But now, the man at the center of all of it wants his redemption delivered overnight. That's the entitlement of power. That is the hallmark of grandiosity. The mindset that says, I've suffered long enough, as if doing 14 months of a 50-month sentence somehow levels the playing field. When you've lived your entire adult life surrounded by yes men, private jets, and camera flashes, humility is an alien language. And what this motion to expedite tells us is that despite the carefully worded letters about peace and spirituality, the man inside that cell still believes his own exceptionality. He still believes he's owed special consideration because of who he is. Let's also be clear, this is not a witch hunt. The man was acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering charges that could have put him away for life. The system already spared him the harshest penalties. He got 4 years. 4. This is 4, not this. 4. And he still can't sit with that. He still can't let time do its job. This is the part where the narcissism is most transparent. Narcissists often confuse consequences with persecution. They don't view punishment as justice. They view it as unfairness. To them, every repercussion is a personal attack. Every boundary is an insult. Every delay is disrespect. So instead of reflecting on why the world no longer bends to him, Diddy is doubling down on the belief that he deserves to be fast-tracked back to freedom. He's already framed his time in prison as rebirth, a spiritual reset. But a spiritual reset isn't a branding opportunity. It's not a new slogan for the next chapter of your career. It's supposed to be a reckoning. And real transformation doesn't involve lawyers asking for special treatment while the people you hurt are still processing the damage. And let's not forget, he's still facing multiple civil lawsuits. Former staff, former partners, former associates, all claiming years of abuse, manipulation, and coercion. They're all making it up, right? It's all a big cash grab. All of these people, every single one of them, all lies, right? Everybody just there to take it. So when his defense argues that his arrest destroyed his business, what they're really saying is the truth finally caught up, and now we want the courts to hurry up so he can start over. That is not accountability. That is called PR. There's a reason the public reaction to his speedy appeal request has been a mix of outrage and disbelief. Because it's not just about the law, it's about the optics of entitlement. When powerful men fall, their first instinct is not reflection, it's control. How fast can I rebuild the narrative? How soon can I get back to the image that made me untouchable? If the justice system moves faster for him than anyone else, it sends a devastating message. Fame buys time and justice sells priority passes. That's not equality under the law. That's privilege rebranded as efficacy. Meanwhile, the real victims, the ones who spoke up in those docuseries and courtrooms, are still left to pick up their pieces at normal speed. They don't get expedited healing. They don't get a fast forward on their trauma. So no, Sean Combs doesn't deserve a speedy appeal. He deserves a fair one, just like every other inmate sitting in a cell tonight without the luxury of a PR team to repackage their crimes into a redemption arc. If this really is the new Diddy, the one who's learned and grown, then he should understand that growth isn't measured by how fast you get out. It's measured by what you do with the time you've got. And if he can't stand still long enough to face that, then maybe the rest or the reset that he keeps preaching about never happened at all. Because of course it didn't. Because at the end of the day, a man who spent decades building an empire on control will always reveal himself the moment he loses it. And right now, his demand for a speedy appeal isn't the voice of a changed man. It's the same old Diddy, still trying to run the show. Give me your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube. If you're not there already, if you're listening to us on a podcast platform, thank you. Please do hit subscribe where you're at. Also, check out YouTube so you can comment and give your voice on this. And do hit subscribe while you're there. Until next time, I'm Tony Brueski. We will talk again real.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
Yeah, we're going to do this story. We're going to talk about it. Maybe you've heard rumblings. Maybe you've read about it. People was, I think, one of the first to report on it. Just when you thought it couldn't get darker, really. If, again, allegations, what this is, allegations, allegedly, in front of all of this. And maybe it is because this is a story that's like, seriously? Really? Did this actually happen? Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it purrs, quiet, confident, knowing exactly how much you'll let it get away with. That's the kind of power that Sean Diddy Combs allegedly wielded for decades, polished, untouchable, wrapped in designer fabric and nostalgia. The kind of power that hides in plain sight because we all helped build the myth. We bought the records, we wore the clothes, we called him mogul. But what happens when the mogul becomes a monster behind the curtain? When the man who sold swagger and success becomes the symbol of coercion, humiliation, and desecrated legacy? The newest accusation against Combs is not just another lawsuit. It is a horror show written in the language of power and blasphemy. Because this one didn't happen in a hotel room or a hidden mansion. It happened in a shrine, a warehouse allegedly lined with clothes of the late rapper Christopher Wallace, the notorious B.I.G., the friend whose death helped catapult Diddy into pop culture sainthood. The police report says that in February of 2020, during what was supposed to be a project collaboration with Biggie's son, CJ Wallace, Diddy allegedly brought a music producer into that warehouse. He invited him to go through Biggie's preserved clothes, to touch the relics, to feel close to hip-hop history. And then, allegedly, according to the report, Diddy sat down on a couch. The allegation is there was something playing on his phone. And then he started doing something, hiding something behind a something t-shirt, a Biggie shirt. Like, what is that? What is he doing? Something one might do on their own, alone, in a bedroom, maybe. Yeah. That's the allegation. That's the allegation that People is reporting. Picture that, if this is true. The shirt of a murdered legend draped over a man who's built an empire off that legend's ghost. The report says he looked at the victim, laughed, removed the shirt to show off, and said, "Come help me out." I'm mincing words of these allegations. When the man didn't, Diddy allegedly threw the soiled shirt at him, landing across his lap and arm, and said, "Rest in peace, Biggie." If this story is true, that's not just assault, that's desecration. That's performance art for a sociopath. It's a message: I don't own the myth. I can defile it whenever I please. And like every story tied to Diddy, the alleged victim didn't run. He stayed in the orbit, because that's what people do when they've already invested in the dream. When you're standing in a room filled with platinum plaques, it's hard to believe that the man behind them might be a predator. The predator continued working with CJ, or the producer rather, continued working with CJ Wallace, because what's the alternative? Walk away and destroy your career? But the tone changed. He says another associate, Willie Mack, started calling him a liar, started threatening him. Then in 2021, the story takes a darker turn, allegedly. He travels to California to a house in the Hollywood Hills to meet with CJ and Willie Mack about their project. Two men grab him, rough him up, throw a hood over his head. They lead him to another room, allegedly, throw him onto an ottoman, and then he hears that voice, the one we've all heard 1,000 times on the radio. The report says he allegedly saw Diddy's black custom Air Force Ones, heard him screaming, calling him a snitch. Then, according to the police statement, Diddy grabbed him by the head and forced things. The guy allegedly pulled away, and apparently it kind of kept going on. Then Diddy allegedly walked out. CJ allegedly came in afterwards, said he felt bad. This is almost like, is this real? Is this real? I don't know. These again, quite the allegations. And look, there's plenty of raw, real shit out there on this man. But this is the new allegation. The man who built his career on friendship, loyalty, and family, who paraded Biggie's name like a brand, now accused of essaying someone while invoking that very friendship. It's grotesque if it's true. And it sounds familiar to some other stories and other accusations against him. Diddy's been running this playbook for years: power, humiliation, silence. The public only sees the headlines, the glamorous parties, the yacht photos, the endless king of hip-hop narratives. But the people who worked in that orbit talk about something else: isolation, fear, and intimidation. The parties where people said no once and were never invited again. The assistants who signed NDAs thicker than phone books. The artists who suddenly lost their careers after crossing him. This is how control works. It doesn't need to kill you, to destroy you. It just needs to make you invisible. And this time, he didn't choose just any symbol to defile. He chose Biggie, allegedly. The man whose death defined him, whose name he's been cashing in on for decades. That's the part that chills, I think, everyone the most, because this wasn't random, it was ritual. The act of doing that into a shirt, the line about rest in peace, I mean, that's what almost makes it feel not real. Again, these are allegations, so we can't confirm it is. But it's being reported on by some fairly large organizations. It's power mixed with preservation. That's a man performing his dominance over an entire legacy. And again, with what we've seen, what we've heard, and other allegations over time, yeah, it makes this feel like, oh, well, this might be a possibility. Some people say, why now? Why are all these victims coming out after so many years? The answer is simple: because the system that protected him finally started to crack. You can't intimidate everyone forever. You can't sue every survivor into silence. And now Diddy's not in a penthouse. He's in a prison, serving 50 months on federal prostitution charges, now transferred to Fort Dix. Yeah, I know the name. But it's like Club Fed. It's very nice if you have to go to a prison. With a release date now set for May of 28. He's appealing, of course. He wants a speedy review, as though justice should operate on his timetable. But no matter what he tells himself, this time he's not in control of the room. And still, the lawsuits continue to pile up. Over 50 civil suits still sitting there, painting a consistent, stomach-turning picture of coercion, assault, grooming, and humiliation, stretching back decades. Some victims say they were beaten. Others say they were drugged. All describe the same structure: invitation to exclusive spaces, drugs introduced under a guise of relaxation, and a sudden turn into violence or some sort of sexual coercion. But this case, the Biggie shirt, it carries a special kind of darkness, because it's not just about power, it's about the legacy as leverage. I mean, imagine controlling someone's memory so completely that you feel entitled to weaponize their belongings. Imagine desecrating your dead friend's name as part of your dominance ritual. It's almost poetic in its depravity, if it's real. And what about C.J. Wallace? Biggie's son is named in the report. He's not accused of assault or anything, but he's there, tied to the project, connected to the timeline. He reportedly felt bad afterwards, but feeling bad doesn't undo the machine. When the person holding the keys to your father's empire behaves like that, how do you even push back? This is how power perpetuates itself. It infects everyone nearby, forcing them into complicity, whether they want it or not. Inside Fort Dix, Diddy's reality looks a lot different. There's no mansions, there's no entourage, there's no multi-million-dollar bottles of champagne, just another inmate in a low-security federal facility eating institutional meals, sleeping on a cot, and attending the same mandatory programs as everyone else. The Bureau of Prisons lists him as eligible for substance abuse programming, and that's about as close to luxury as he gets right now. But outside those walls, the myth, well, it is still collapsing. The mogul narrative is rotting from the inside, because this isn't a single scandal. It's an entire ecosystem of exploitation finally being documented. Again, all allegations. The more these reports surface, the more they paint the same picture. A man who didn't just exploit people sexually or emotionally, but culturally, who turned power itself into performance art. And look, there will always be defenders, the ones who say he gave so many people their start. But here's the ugly truth. Giving someone a start doesn't grant you ownership of their body. Elevating culture doesn't exempt you from the consequences of violating human beings. For years, Diddy's power depended on people believing he was untouchable. That myth is dead. Now we're left with questions. What happens to Biggie's legacy now? What happens to C.J. Wallace, whose father's memory was allegedly weaponized by the very man who claims to have loved him most? What happens to the industry that kept protecting Combs even as rumor after rumor piled up? And maybe this is another rumor. The irony here is suffocating. Diddy built his empire on the back of a man whose life ended violently. And now, decades later, the same empire is being dismantled by his own violence, his own darkness, his own inability to stop seeing people as possessions. There's something poetic about the fall of someone who thought he could rewrite every story, because this story, this one, written in police reports, lawsuits, and survivor statements, doesn't get to be remixed. He can appeal, he can deny, he can file all the motions he wants, but the narrative's no longer his to control. And maybe that's what the moment is all about. Watching the myth of invincibility finally unravel. Watching the industry that called him king try to scrub his fingerprints off the crown. Watching the world look at the Biggie archives not as sacred artifacts, but as evidence. Because when a shirt once worn by Biggie Smalls becomes part of some sort of SA allegation, that's not just a fall from grace, that's a total collapse of moral gravity, if it's true. That's what happens when someone confuses being a gatekeeper of culture with being a god. So yes, Diddy sits in prison today, but the real sentence is this. The myth he built to hide behind has turned into a museum of horror. Every artifact, every story, every legendary night, re-examined, recontextualized, relabeled as evidence. The walls continue to close in, and this time he doesn't get to curate that exhibit. The Museum of Power is finally burning down, and all that's left is the smell of smoke, the echo of denial, and a shirt that should have been left on the hanger, a relic of a legend defined allegedly by a man who swore he'd honor it. That's not just another lawsuit. That's the eulogy for an empire. Do you think this one is true? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And it's not I don't, no. It's I don't know. It's hard to know what to believe. It truly is. We'll see how this plays out with the allegations and the police filings on this, and we'll keep an eye on it. It's so grotesque. It's like, you did what? What? Huh? People got weird ways of doing shit if this is real. Search Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. You'll find us on YouTube, and in the comments there, your thoughts. We'll talk again real.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.